How can we make the world better? By making ourselves better. The Dr. Joe Show explores how you can make positive personal change by using his groundbreaking and highly effective I Am approach to understand who we are and why we do what we do. Your small changes can have big effects.
Join us now for the Dr. Joe Show with Mark Stiles of Stiles Law and your host, Dr. Joe Schrand.
Hey, here we are again. It's me and Dr. Joe right here on WATD on the Me and Dr. Joe Show. How are you, Dr. Joe?
I'm quite well, Mark. Quite well. How about you?
Doing all right. Getting ready for the holiday season, this whole Thanksgiving to the next holiday where we celebrate Christmas in my family. It's been kind of a whirlwind. We've got a full house, which is always nice. Full house, full hearts, right?
That's lovely. Yeah, and this year it's the same day as Hanukkah, which is a
cool.
remarkable coincidence. Yeah, so we get to do the whole 8 candles of Hanukkah all in sort of one night. And we do 8 and 8, and you guys are doing your thing, so it's going to be really interesting.
So you're doing the 8 in one day?
The 8 nights of Hanukkah.
Yeah.
It's a song that I wrote a while ago.
I know. By the way, I mentioned that on Feel Good Friday the other morning.
Did you?
Yeah.
That's very nice of you. Thank you.
Yeah. Hopefully they dug it up and played it.
Yeah. That would be great if they did. Actually, I'm trying to find it again because it was connected to Becca's Berklee School of Music YouTube channel, and she's not at Berklee because she graduated several years ago. So now I cannot access it.
Oh, really?
So I may just have to do it again.
That might be a good thing. Maybe you could get John Shea to put you on the local artist.
Well, that'd be interesting.
Get the.
I'm not sure whether that song would be the one that they would want to hear.
Well, it's allowed to be played on the radio, right? You don't say anything that wouldn't be radio FCC objected, right?
No, there's one word that people probably will cringe at, but that's the whole idea of the song.
Right.
We can get to that in a bit, though. But I also am posting blogs again on Psychology Today.
Cool.
And I'm going to post a blog about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Oh, that's interesting.
The psychology behind Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, who initially, remember, is rejected by his peers.
As broken.
As absolutely broken and mocked until Santa sees the benefit, the incredible benefit and skill of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and what Rudolph does with that.
And it takes only one person to impact and influence that individual's life, right? And this one happens to be Santa. Or Rudolph. But everybody has a person like that in their life. Right?
I hope so. We certainly know that every child who's gone through trauma who is resilient has had at least one person see them as valuable. So Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is actually a very interesting story when you think about it, especially in our world today where there's so much tension, there's so much division, and a lot of it is because you don't appreciate the way somebody looks.
Right.
And this is saying, there is value in everyone.
I can't wait to read it. So that'll be on Psychology Today leading up to the holiday, or?
That's right. So I'm hoping to post it probably over the weekend.
Oh, cool. Is it done? Has it even been started? Is it only in your iteration at this point?
Yes. But I have
outline. Where are you? I'd love to understand because you're able to put out some really good information relatively quickly. Like, what is your process? Like, so Rudolph, the advertisement comes over the TV and the idea hits you and this is great. This is the I Am. Then I'm going to write an article about it. What is your next move from there? Is it jot down notes? Is it talking to an audio recorder? What do you do?
No, yeah, I start writing. But what's really great is I have so much material from the past as well.
What do you mean?
Which is still applicable. So In one of my books, Do You Really Get Me?
Yeah.
Right, which talks about theory of mind, I talk about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. So I suddenly remembered that. And so there are a few paragraphs that I can now extract and build on. So
I see. So there's your Chat GPT. It's Chat Dr. Joe previous stuff.
yeah, for this one. I mean, for many of the others not, but this one in particular, it struck me that it's worth
That's
doing.
great. Well, why recreate the wheel, as they say, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You've built so much content. It's, if everyone hasn't seen it, well, you got to keep putting it out there then
I'm
until
gonna keep putting it out there.
everybody understands what the I am actually is and how wonderful the world would be if everyone understood that we all just want the same thing.
We all want the same thing. We just want to feel valued by somebody else. And it was my fourth book, I think. But the first book, about stress, it was remarkable writing the first book. And, with that in mind, it's always wonderful to have an author who has written their first book. So
Exciting.
with that, how's that for a segue?
That's
Mark?
a great segue, and it's inspiring with these first book authors. This
Absolutely.
gentleman received his Bachelor of Arts and Masters of Arts in creative writing from Harvard University. Over the course of his studies, he was published 4 times in the Charles River Review, the school's literary journal. He currently works at Harvard as payroll administrator and is often called upon to write or edit departmental communications regarding practice and policy. In his spare time, and I can see it, he plays guitar in the rock band Faded Halo and performs drama with local theaters, like one close to you here on the South Shore. He lives near Boston with his wife and daughters, and this is his first novel. And this, listeners, is William F. Carter. Welcome to the show, Bill.
All right, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, welcome, Bill. It's great having you. And for people who heard the reference, we have a local company theater called Company Theater. And Bill, you are a performer there.
Yes. Yeah, I did theater in middle school and high school, but then after I graduated, really weren't opportunities to do that. But my first wife had been doing shows at the Company Theater in Norwell since high school and over the years. And I thought, one day it would be wonderful to be a tiny little person on the stage somewhere in a minor little role. And then in 2016, she came to me and said, "Hey, we're doing Christmas Carol. This is their big staple, their big tradition for the year. They do it every 2 or 3 years. And they didn't have a Bob Cratchit. And rehearsals had already started, and the director, the people in charge were desperate. So she encouraged me to try out. And so for the first time in 20, 25, 26 years, I auditioned for a part, and luckily I got it. And I had a ball. And now this is my 4th time playing Bob Cratchit in as many productions. And I've done other shows around the South Shore, and it's like reawakened this ambition, this love. And I've just been welcomed into this whole very warm, very welcoming, very loving theater community. And it's been wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an incredible experience being up on stage like that. I couldn't help hear the word that they were desperate. Bill, you didn't get in because they were desperate. You're really, really good. I've seen you up there, So.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, no, I don't think they would have settled if I wasn't good for the part. So they took a chance, and I feel like I lived up to expectations. I was very happy about that, and I just absolutely love playing the role. Yeah.
It's such an inspiring role as well. Here's this person, people know Christmas Carol. So you want to tell them about your character and what Bob Cratchit is really all about?
Yeah. Yeah. Bob Cratchit is a very humble, very hardworking, very loyal person. Like I said, he's a very much a family man. He loves his wife. He loves his children. He takes pride in his job. He does his best. He doesn't maybe have the best boss in the world, but he's still fiercely loyal to Scrooge throughout the entire show. Like there's that big the Cratchit dinner scene when he raises his mug and says, "And to the founder of our feast, I give you Mr. Scrooge." And that is 100% sincere and heartfelt. So he's someone who just appreciates every good thing in his life, because there's so much bleakness and so much sorrow and uncertainty, especially his youngest son, Tiny Tim, is sick, and they know he's struggling. They know that there isn't a great chance for him to make it. But he just really tries to embrace the positive and appreciate that. And as I get older in life and I am filled with more and more gratitude for all the good things in my life and all the obstacles I've overcome, I can very fiercely relate to Bob, and I just really admire his character, and I feel like it's a very like unsung character.
Yeah. Yeah, there is an optimism in him, isn't there?
Yeah.
Even in the face
Yes.
of all these horrendous hardships. It's not quite like that joke about the pessimist and the optimist. Remember that one where the pessimist says, things just cannot get any worse. And the optimist says, yes, they can. So
Nice.
it's a bad one. It's a bad one.
Yeah.
But being up on stage, that sense of joy of giving back to the community, it's based on oxytocin, if you know that, not OxyContin, but oxytocin, the neurohormone of trust and happiness. So when that audience is giving you that round of applause and you're getting that incredible rush, that incredible feeling, you are being flooded with oxytocin. And
I did not know that.
Yeah, and that's really an important thing, because we can do that for each other. That's what the IM is saying, is that you can really remind someone of their value. And whenever you do that, not only do you change their biological domain and their brain chemistry, but you increase your own value.
Oh,
but isn't that incredible feeling up there? Can you just let people know what it's like for you when you hear that applause?
It is so rewarding and affirming, validating. Because like I said, both as a writer and a musician and as an actor, like, we make a pact with our reader, with our audience, that we're going to give you something worth your time, and we're going to move you, we're going to entertain you, create something that resonates with you. And that applause is that affirmation that we have not let the audience down, and that we have given them something positive. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to do that. And the applause is just like the cherry on top. It's a reward that I just strive to be worthy of. Yes.
Yeah, it's an incredible experience, folks. If you haven't ever been on stage, you may be afraid, but it is worth the effort. And it really is worth your time to do it. And what's lovely is that our sponsors feel that we are worth their time. And so with that in mind, we will take a quick commercial break, hear from our sponsors, give them our time. We'll be right back with me and Dr. Joe.
Hey folks, thank you for listening to the Dr. Joe Show. We've been investigating whether or not we want to bring sponsors into our podcast. What are your thoughts? Do you know somebody who might be a good partner with the Dr. Joe Show, who may want to align their product or service with the Dr. Joe Show? Think about it.
Hey, we're back. Me and Dr. Joe, right here on WATD, your South Shore Everything, with author Bill Carter, with his new book, Fire and Wrath.
And it's a great book. So, Bill, I'm just curious. I mean, we're talking about you being on stage. And when you're on stage, unless you're doing movies, you're reaching a limited audience. But now you've written a novel that could potentially, hopefully, reach millions. So what was it like when you finally got your novel out there?
It was unreal. It still feels a bit surreal to me, because I've been writing for many, many years. I didn't really I learned a lot through the course of my degree work, and I met a professor in 2009 who became my mentor, and he really helped push me to a higher level, sorry. And I'd written several manuscripts of varying quality, but he really helped me unlock my potential back when I took a couple classes with him. And then so I wrote this one, Fire and Wrath, and then he hooked me up with an agent in 2017, and then he and I began working on it together. And so it took 7 years to get the novel to the point where my agent was willing to put his name on it and put it out in the world. So we're talking 24, 25 rounds of revisions, many phone calls, emails. We took the book light years beyond where it started, and I'm so very proud of it. And I really put my blood, sweat, and tears into this over the years. And so to finally give it to the world on whatever level it ends up being is just one of the greatest achievements of my life. And I'm so happy to share it. And I'm so grateful that at least the initial feedback has been profoundly positive and people have really loved it. And so I know I was terrified when it first went to print and sending it out for reviews and stuff. But like I said, just the review, the feedback, all the response has been so amazing that now I know I have a lot of confidence that I have a good something good here. And now the challenge is, once again, is just doing this outreach and trying to get more visibility and get it into more people's hands so that they can enjoy it and appreciate it.
Yeah, that is another challenge that I don't think authors really think about when they're starting this journey.
No, and my publisher is not helping at all with the marketing.
Oh,
So I knew that going in, that I was going to be on my own. So I've been doing book signings. I've done a number of interviews and podcasts. I'm always grateful for all of them. Like, I'm super grateful that we hooked up and we started talking at the theater, and I have this opportunity. So yeah, I'm just trying to find ways to get it out there and get it visible. Yeah.
yeah. Do you have a publicist?
I did hire one, yes. Michelle McGrath, who actually works with the Company Theater and a number of other clients on the South Shore. Excuse me. Sorry, excuse me. And that's been great on a local level. She did reach out to media like newspapers and the local TV, but unfortunately there really wasn't an interest. So one of the first review I got was through a company called Reedsy Discovery, sorry. And they do have marketers on there that you can contract with. I don't know what their rates are. I'm kind of scared to ask, but that might be my next step to try to get this out there on beyond like just a regional level, and maybe get it out there on a national level in some way. I don't know if that's possible, but I got to try, because otherwise, not a lot of people are ever going to find out about it. You know what I mean?
No, I do know what you mean. So we sort of done a teaser for the audience, and we've done what they call the table setting right now, because we haven't even spoken about the title of the book, what it's about, your inspiration for it. So where do you want to start with that, Bill?
I can give like a nice little synopsis or an idea of it.
Great.
So it's a crime thriller. It's very fast paced, but it has a nice emotional core to it, which was key for me. So it's about a professional arsonist who's in his early 40s, career criminal, who is now filled with a lot of guilt and regret about all the bad things he's done. And he knows that his future is not very bright. Like, he's either going to end up in jail or in an early grave at the rate he's going. And he's at a point where, I don't call it a midlife crisis or call it like a moment of clarity, but he wants to try to find a way to make up for past mistakes. And at this particular time, he's contacted by a childhood buddy who's now a sheriff's deputy in Plymouth County, who has a string of 6 unsolved arsons on his hands that he has under enormous political pressure to solve. And they have no clues, they have no leads. So he knows his old buddy from Philadelphia, Jack Coyle, this professional arsonist, is in the area. So he kind of coerces him into helping with the investigation to catch this serial killer. Because he's not only burning houses, he's burning houses with the families inside, which is unusual for an arsonist. So he's an arsonist and a serial killer, and they need to catch him. So our buddy Jack, our hero, our unlikely protagonist, is sort of forced into cooperating with this investigation, and he finds an unlikely and unexpected sort of redemptive arc along the way. So it's a complicated story with a lot of twists and turns, with a lot of backstory to it that I took many tries and many years to blend all together in a cohesive narrative that has a good pace to it, and what I hope is would be a very satisfying experience for the reader.
Well, I can tell you, it is. It's well written. It moves fast, and the part of what you just said made me think of really addiction. Because do you think this guy is addicted to setting fires?
He has been, yes. In fact, there's a flashback to when he's in juvenile prison, and he's talking. There are a couple of chapters where he's talking with a counselor, and the counselor is pretty much forcing him to have to admit that he is obsessed with fire and that he's addicted to it. And Jack doesn't want to admit it because
is that when he's holding the lighter and he's saying, "Don't look at the lighter"?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, because I was having a conversation with a writer friend of mine like five or 6 years ago, and her old ex-boyfriend was obsessed with fire, and she had told me if there's an open flame in the room, he cannot take his eyes off it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I am going to use that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that's very show don't tell, kind of a very key sort of like and there are massive like incentives for him to not look at it, but he still can't help it, and he gets punished for looking at the open flame. And it's his first like sort of sobering moment where he has to face his addiction. And so now, like I said, many years later, he's still dealing with it because even at the beginning of the investigation, he can't help but kind of root for the arsonist because in theory, they're on the same team. Yeah. But that goes through its own journey to the point where he's at times is contemptuous and even then kind of sympathetic toward the arsonist once he finds out everything that's going on. So yeah, it's his own sort of reckoning with his addiction and his obsession. Yes.
And I don't know if you know that one of my areas is addiction medicine.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't know.
And we actually have something called drug story theater that takes theater and uses it as a teaching tool with kids.
Oh, all right.
We can talk about that later. But your comment about Jack's experience as he's now working to track down the arsonist, and he begins to feel this almost sense of purpose. One of my phrases is contribute to society to help with your sobriety.
Oh, nice.
And so I think that captures this because sometimes we don't think of addiction outside of drugs and alcohol. But this is an addiction. Mark, what do you think?
I think it's really cool. But one of the questions I had for Bill was, where do you do your research on something like this, on a topic like this? Like, how do you get into the mind of the protagonist and the other characters?
Yeah, it took a lot of research in so many different aspects. And that's one thing my agent did challenge me with. He's like, I need to know his mentality. Like at some points you go in, but in a lot of places it's kind of just skimming the surface. I need you to dig in and really get to the heart of his mentality. And so, yeah, it was a lot of online research, going to psychological journals, reading studies, reading websites about addiction, and those kind of obsessions, as well as having to do research about arson investigation and like the practice of arson itself, arson tactics and methodology. So yeah, I did weeks and weeks of research, and it's not usually my thing, but I love doing it because I knew it was going to help enrich this story and give it the authenticity it needed. So it was a wonderful experience. All I can say is I hope the FBI was not looking at my search history.
That's what I'm thinking, right?
Yeah.
No,
Were
it
there-
was
Just going to blow up with someone.
it was just research. It really was. It was just research. No, we actually have a personal story about that. That's actually part of how me and Dr. Joe got started, but that's another story.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So yeah, Mark, the research.
Yeah. So my challenge was I really wanted to take these various technical, psychological aspects that I had researched and put them into the narrative to give it that weight and authenticity it needed, but not to really slow down the pacing. So it was a challenge to try to find ways to just sort of weave things in, whether like sometimes Coyle would tell a story about like an arson that happened, like a real one that happened, like there was one that happened in 1990 that was very much a revenge arson, and Coyle was using that as an example to contrast with the current, with their situation. So yeah, there were all different ways of the constant challenge was trying to find a way to mingle that in without distracting the reader or slowing things down. So it took a long time to balance that. So, but it was certainly worth every second. Yes.
Absolutely. And that actually is exactly part of our challenge here is how do we keep people involved without distracting them with our commercial breaks from our sponsors? And so with that in mind, we will hopefully not distract you too much. We'll be right back with me and Dr. Joe and author Bill Carter.
Hey, folks, welcome back. So any thoughts? Do you listen to other podcasts? Do you see how they do the sponsors? Is there a way that they're utilizing sponsors that you enjoy or you don't enjoy? I listen to SmartList, and I really enjoy how the co-hosts share the voiceover for the product or service. It's really funny for the most part, but it's unique. It's them really endorsing. Does that work? What do you think?
So we are back in with Bill Carter. So, Bill, we were talking about your book, Fire and Wrath. How'd you come up with the title?
I gotta admit, my agent came up with it, and I'm super jealous. The original title was called Dead Man Zone, which is an Australian firefighting term.
Huh.
And I was never 100% happy with that, but it was like the working title until we thought of something better. And he and I brainstormed for days and days. And he said, come up with something better, come up with something. And I must have thrown like dozens of potential titles at him. But I knew in my heart that none of them were really quite there. And so he has a very good way of really getting right to the point. And because he's been in the industry he was an editor before he was an agent. So, and he's been in the industry for decades. So I'm very grateful to have his tutelage and have his help. So it's like, it's a story about arson and it's a vendetta. So he said, okay, simple terms like fire and wrath. I'm like, it's the second I heard it, yep, that's it. That is it. That's perfect.
Yeah. Because those two words go so well together, don't they? Because anger is wrath. That's what it.
Yeah, and it's righteous anger. Yeah. So like the culprit has a reason for what he or she is doing, and in his own mind, he is doing something righteous. I will say, in his own mind.
Yeah. I'd like to actually continue on that thread because that's within the first couple of pages of the book. I mean, without giving it away, there is this really interesting paradox that happens where he has a motivation for is it his first fire? Can we assume it's his first fire?
The first big one, yes.
First big one, right?
Yeah.
And he has a motivation, and it made me think of, so what is justice? But
that's a good
without
question.
giving it too much away, is it okay if we share what that initial motivation was?
Yeah,
for
sure.
Coyle?
Yeah. So Jack lives, he and his sister live in a very poor part of Philadelphia. Their parents are terrible. They're horrible parents. They're very neglectful. They're very abusive. And so Jack is 14. His sister is 12. They're on their own pretty much. And they're in probably a very crappy school system. And there's a vice principal who is in charge of discipline. And there's a rumor that he preys on like underprivileged female students who come under his influence. So there's like he punishes those girls in ways that is rumored to be like sexual assault. And his brother is the vice principal's brother is a cop. He's been in the system forever, and just he's been able to get away with it for better or worse. And so Jack doesn't really bother with it. He's very much a loner. But when his sister gets punished and comes under this guy's attention, she warns him and says, "Hey, I got detention with this particular guy, and I got a bad feeling about this." And Jack just kind of blows her off. He's not really paying attention. And he's like, "Hey, can't do the time, don't do the crime." And so he, in a very, very terrible moment, probably one of the biggest mistakes of his entire life, he blows her off and doesn't listen to her. And so then she does get punished, and she does get assaulted by this principal. And then the two of them are left to sort of cope with it. And of course he's furious at the system, he's furious at himself, and he knows that there is not going to be any justice through the system. Like, nobody's going to believe them. Like I said, they're bad kids, they're from a bad neighborhood. He's this respectable authority figure. And so Jack decides in his anger to sneak across the city in the middle of the night and set fire to the principal's house. And so he's dedicated to it. He's ready to do it. But then at the last moment, he realizes that his sister would appreciate him punishing a monster, but she would not want him to become a monster in the process. And so at the last moment, he holds back and realizes, all right, I would like, this is what I'm really, it penetrates like what he's actually doing. And he's realized, no, I can't do this. Like, this is too much. Like, I shouldn't be doing this. But the tragedy is he gets caught anyway. And then, because attempted arson is just as bad as real arson. And he's caught pretty much with a gas can and a lighter in his hand with a big trail of gasoline around the guy's house in the middle of the night. And so he gets sent to juvenile prison for 7 years, and he comes out a hardened criminal. And it's a tragedy.
Yeah.
So that's how the story begins, because I need the reader to be sympathetic to him and not look at him as a monster, because he's really he's a victim of his own bad decisions, is what he is.
But that is such an important art form, to be able to have a reader empathize, sympathize, want this kid to succeed, even though he's setting a fire. And it is that pause. So I'm just wondering, I mean, the psychology of that really caught my attention. It's powerful that he paused right then. So how does that follow him through the rest of his journey as he develops as a criminal?
Well, it gives him, what I would qualify as at least a relative moral compass. Like, the crew that he works with, they're pretty much it's the bunch of guys that met each other in juvenile prison, and they came up together, and most of them had similar bad circumstances, and they didn't start off as bad kids. Like, they just, like I said, they made bad decisions, or they made mistakes. And so they did form together this criminal enterprise, but they had a certain code of honor to them, if that's not a total cliche at this point. But yes, they only went after other criminals. They didn't harm civilians, and they didn't, like I said, they didn't mess with drugs or prostitution or anything. They just kind of did hard crimes that didn't affect innocent people. And so, and he learned over time to temper his fascination with fire with applying it in as responsible way as possible so that innocent people didn't get hurt. So he's maybe trying to have his cake and eat it too, but it was important to, like I said, to, I guess, to feed his addiction or to feed his obsession, but do it in a productive way that didn't hurt the wrong people, I guess.
Yeah.
So yes, he always had that in the back of his head, that conscience and that regret of that he let his sister down and that he doesn't want to let anybody down ever again. Yeah.
It's so interesting to think of the I am and crime, because that's really part of what this story is about. You know, the I am is saying we're always doing the best we can. You know, you don't have to like it, you don't have to condone it, not a free ride. You're held responsible for it. But let's look at it again instead of judging it. And think about those words, you know, look again and reverse them. Again, look. Again, to repeat something, look like a spectator. Let's respect who we are and why we do what we do. But this is the reason part why I wanted you on the show is to explore this challenge. And Mark, I'm glad we're going to talk about it, because what this guy is doing is criminal, and yet it's still the best he can do. And there's this other component to it where he's trying to do it with righteous anger, with that wrath that started when he was a kid. Had a pause, wondered whether it was the right thing to do, and then got caught, and then was punished really for just the plan, not even the action.
Yeah, just for his intention. Yeah.
And not to make it silly, but that really connects with Christmas Carol in so many ways, right? I mean, think about what Scrooge is. Scrooge is this guy who started off a nice kid who was, you know, progressively ostracized, ridiculed, had losses, and became angry and turned it against him. I mean, am I missing something here, Bill?
No, not at all. In fact, I got to play Scrooge in a very small performance down in Plymouth. And that was the thing, is that I feel he's only angry in the opening scenes. And then as the ghosts review his life, he's just really, more than anything, regretful, and just realizes all the bad mistakes he's made, all the people he's turned away or alienated, and how he's wasted so much of his life with this obsession with money and not trying to be a good person and be a good neighbor and be a good part of the group of his city, of his world, and using what his means to make the lives of other people better. And it takes so much seeing his own headstone to finally make him realize that there's so much more to this life and so much he can give, and he'll get that back, and he'll be rewarded too, and he'll be happier. Like, everybody wins when he is the better person, and my character does find that out too. Like, when he decides to help out and contribute, he is rewarded in very unexpected but very profound ways. So yes, I think it's a redemptive arc. It is.
Yeah.
It's learning to live again and rediscovering your better nature, I think.
And I think that's why the book will resonate with a lot of people, Bill. Really, because there's this archetypical theme in it. You know, sometimes bad things happen to people, but it's how you then manage it. What do you do with it? Do you then just recreate it and turn yourself against somebody else? Or do you use it as a way to say, I don't want that to happen to anyone else? How can I use my experience to help others? And what I'm so grateful for is how our sponsors do that all the time. Our sponsors use their experience to help others, including me and Dr. Joe. So let's listen to them. And we'll be right back with me and Dr. Joe.
Hey, welcome back. And again, we're super grateful for you listening to the Dr. Joe Show. If you have anyone that you think might be a good sponsor, shoot us an email at drjoepodcast@gmail.com. DRJOE podcast@gmail.com. Give us your thoughts about the show too. We're wondering, are we talking to the trees or are people really gaining value in this? Please let us know. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of the show.
And hey, we are back. It's me and Dr. Joe and you, the listener, here on WATD, your South Shore Everything 95.9. And we're here with author Bill Carter and his new book, Fire and Wrath. Exciting stuff. And the IM, how it relates to the IM, Dr. Joe.
And how it relates to the IM, because, I mean, think about this, folks. It's a novel, a crime novel, a mystery novel, a riveting novel about fire, about arson, about somebody who is addicted, if you will, to that power, that unbridled power of fire. And, you know, think about us millions of years ago. This was one of the turning points in our evolution, was being able to manage fire and the power of that, and being able really to cook food and to take the protein source and actually make it even more nutritious by cooking fire.
Where do you sit on the spectrum of pyromania, Dr. Joe?
Well, I mean, I tell you, it's hard to put a match to that, really.
Yes.
You know, my feeling about these things is we have stigmatized the whole world by using the word disorder.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is part of who that person is. Why are they fascinated by it? Why do they then want to see it all over, and the power that it has in destroying? Destroying. I mean, you know, we're going to get to the two truths, but, you know, you control no one, you influence everyone, you get to choose. So I'm curious, Bill, in your research, what did you begin to uncover about the psychology of an arsonist?
A number of things. Yeah, I mean, it typically was some sort of childhood trauma. Usually, like I said, in some kind of disturbed or broken home. Yeah, the attraction was power. I mean, this, like, if you're 12 years old, whatever, in a perfect world, like, you're not going to get your hands on what would be considered traditional weapons, like, unless somebody's very careless. Like, an average kid wouldn't get their hands on a gun, we would hope, maybe a knife, but like someone like Jack, who had no access to any of that, to him, like I said, fire represented, like, just like you said, unbridled, untempered power. And to someone like him, who had felt helpless most of his life, that was a huge attraction to him. And just the idea that there is a universal fear of fire, but he was not afraid of it. And I think he recognized at an early age that, oh, if I can control this, then people will be afraid of me. And like I said, that's my power. And so it was a way, I guess, for him to assert himself and feel like empowered for the first time in his life. Yeah. So yeah. And then there are like, and so like on the spectrum of like pyromania, I want to say he's not like super extreme. Like, and there are like, because I don't like the way arsonists are usually portrayed in the media. They're usually portrayed as somehow like mentally challenged or something. But he's very smart and he's very clever and he's very patient. But yes, there are more irrational attractions to fire, as far as, like I said, just a sense of destruction, wanting to destroy things or people or whatever. Enemies in one's mind, you know what I mean? the oppressors, I guess, want to say, like kids lash out at their oppressors, and that's what maybe why some play with fire or set fires to conquer their own demons, for better or worse. But yeah, it's intense. Yes.
What are you thinking, Mark?
Well, did you see the difference between the person fascinated by fire versus the person who's the arson, who's fascinated by the destruction of the fire? I find fire fascinating. I'm mesmerized by fire often, right? And I used to, as a little kid, enjoy lighting little fires. You
I
know,
think a lot of yeah.
I learned so much about Mark every show.
you know, and by the
Every
grace
show.
of God, go I didn't burn down an entire forest, you know, and that you hear the stories of the kids that do that. But like there is that level of excitement and, you know, interest and mesmerization of fire versus that person who's, you know, an arsonist who, you know, seeks that destruction and that damage.
Yeah.
Did you see that in your research of the book?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, there is certainly a spectrum, and yeah, the obsession or the addiction can get really intense and consuming, really. So yeah, I definitely wanted to make sure my character was not of that particular persuasion. It was a bit more rational. But yeah, it can get pretty dark. Yes.
Yeah. And I did appreciate in the book that you did not create him that way, because I think that would have alienated him from the reader. Yeah. I mean, as a reader, you want this guy to succeed, even though they're burning things up. It's really, in that way, it's really well written, folks. You should check it out. So with that in mind, I want to come to the IM. So the IM, you know, the idea we're always doing the best we can. Jack Coyle is doing the best he can, but influenced, as you say, by his home domain, no question. And then the social domain, which is this vice principal who assaults his sister. So that's the social domain. Has an influence on his biological domain, his brain and body, and the IC, the way I see myself, the way I think other people see me. But because these four domains interact, a small change can have a big effect. You don't need to change everything. And it's clear, you know, small changes have big effects. So, Bill, what small change can you recommend to our listeners based on our topic for tonight?
I would say patience. More than anything, like I said, over the years, I've tended to be a very impulsive person at times, and I hate to have to admit this, but I have destroyed friendships because I was too impetuous, I was too quick to anger, or I was too quick to insecurity, and I alienated people that I would give anything to be able to talk to again. And I reacted in the heat of the moment, and I regret that bitterly. And I would give anything for it to go back and do it differently. So I have to remind myself, because I can still be kind of hot-headed at times, no pun intended.
It's there though, Bill, and I appreciate it. You already said that when you said you got kind of heated, so I am totally fired up about it.
Yeah. And so just nice. I would suggest to anybody, if you're upset, if you're angry, if you feel hurt, just try to take those extra couple minutes to calm down and think about what you're going to say or what you're going to do before you do it, because it can have such long-lasting repercussions. And nothing is worth losing a loved one over, or a dear friend, or any kind of relationship, a business relationship or personal one, anything. Just to take the time and think before you look before you leap, I guess. I don't know.
No, that is great advice, that patience. And we have a phrase, me and Dr. Joe, keep it frontal, don't go limbic, which is exactly what you're talking about. Think it through, folks. Take that pause, very important. Great. And I loved all the puns. So the second truth of the IM, because everyone has an IC domain, the way is interested in what you think about them, which has an effect on their biological domain, because it feels different when you feel respected or disrespected. You're part of someone's home or social domain. So the second truth, you control no one, but you influence everyone. You get to choose the kind of influence you want to be. Bill Carter, first-time author, performer, what kind of influence do you want to be?
I would want to be an unending source of encouragement to people. I want to be a cheerleader for the people I believe in, especially the people who I feel like don't get enough attention or don't get enough validation. I will be on their side, and I will do everything I can to help them feel valued and to feel empowered, because nobody was really there for me when I needed it when I was younger, and I would have given anything to have that encouragement. And so I will sincerely offer anything I can to the people I love, for the people in my life, to help them on their journey and make sure that they know that they feel valued and loved. And nothing is more important to me.
So who was there? Who was that person for you, Bill? There's always one person who believes in you. Hope you don't mind me asking, but I am a psychiatrist.
Yeah. It was different people. I wish I could say his family, but it wasn't. It was teachers. In fact, this book would not exist today if not for my 7th grade English teacher. Because I just did creative writing as assignments because we all had to do them, and I didn't really think much of it. But at the end of the year, in the 7th grade in 1985, I got an academic award that said excellent writer, future author. And that changed my life. And that made me consider this to be a serious vocation that I had not considered before and might not have otherwise. So that made all the difference in my life. So I wish I could go back and thank her. I don't think she's with us anymore, but I would give anything to be able to tell her how much that meant to me.
I got goosebumps.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And Bill, I so appreciate you being here tonight, but sharing that inspirational story is so important. I mean, you've written a story about a young man who could be seen as bad and with less value. And you've been able to craft a story where he has value and then he gives back. Yeah. And of course, without giving away, a lot of things happen.
Yes.
The market's turning,
Yes. Yeah.
So how do people get in touch with you, find you? How do they get the book?
The book is on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It's ebook and paperback. Reasonable prices, I think, considering prices today. Fire and Wrath, William F. Carter. I am on Facebook and Instagram, Bill Carter Rockland or Bill Carter Harvard, because there are a million Bill Carters there, unfortunately. But you can find me. Yeah. And I have my channel. I have a music channel on YouTube where I do my own original music and stuff. Finster 72, or Doubters Prison is my band name. I'm around, and I love to interact with people. I did a book club last month. I might do another book club in early next year. I love talking to the people who have read it and answer their questions and be able to talk about their experience and stuff. So I welcome and am supremely grateful for any interactions with this book and the way it may have improved somebody's day or resonated with them in some small way. I just want to have a positive impact. That's all.
Fire and Wrath. I'd love to hear some of your music as well. Maybe we'll actually get a little clip and play it as we say good night, everybody. And we will see you next week right here on Me and Dr. Joe. Thanks, Mark.
Have a great week, everybody.
Nice to meet you,
Bill
Carter.
Right. Thank you very much for having me. Yeah.
Night, all.